So right
Okay.
now we're not going to meet.
Okay, great.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, May 6th. It's 9:04 a.m. and this is a meeting of Senate Natural Resources and Energy. At the moment, this is our last scheduled meeting for this session, although if we need to meet to move something, we will do that. And I will make sure to have announcements, and Jude will send out an email and a link as well, of course. So with that, this is sort of a housekeeping and updates meeting for us. The biggest piece of work that's now pending is our weatherization bill. It, as everyone knows, S109 got folded into the budget, traveled over to the House. The House has expressed some concern. I'm guessing Senator Westman's heard about this as a member of Appropriations, that the appropriations bill this year had quite a bit of policy in it, including ours. So there is some discomfort by some members of the House with moving that much. How that gets sorted out, I think, is really, that's more of a conversation between appropriations committees and Speaker and Pro Tem. But I'm just trying to keep an eye on 109 or our work there. And I've been in touch with Chair Briglin on an ongoing basis in the last 3 days. It's uncertain how House Energy and Technology is going to respond to that language. It is very brief in terms of policy change. There's only one brief change in it, and that is resetting a target in 10 VSA 581 to move to 120,000 homes weatherized by 2031, and the greenhouse gas emissions that go with that. The rest is really implementation oriented. So I'm hoping for a chance to meet with that committee, explain what's in there. A lot of it happens outside the legislature. There's essentially a volunteer work group on workforce. There's a volunteer work, for the most part, work group on counseling. The PUC is doing some research work on our behalf, the legislature's behalf. And the rest is implementation through the appropriations, which we did a lot of tuning on, but they don't depart all that far from the governor's original proposal. So I'm hoping that we get to yes. And I certainly think it would be worth doing everything in the bill, because there's two things. One, we increase weatherization for low-income weatherization by 20% for the coming year. We'll have another year that, relative to the 3-year trend, we should be up about 100% in the market-based weatherizations. And we'll have that research work going on finance, workforce, and counseling that will allow us to do the sort of a second half of this bill next year, which I would say is, how do we make this a program that can grow, not just based on the one-time money we got now, but for the balance of a decade. And so there's a lot to do, and looking forward to those conversations with the House. I will, of course, keep everyone posted. And if you all have conversations with colleagues and feel like you have something you want to share, I'm certainly happy to hear from you. So that's 109. I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments on 109. So there are enough different options for how we might move forward that for now, rather than lay them out, I think I'm just going to wait a little longer to hear from the other side, and then we'll play it from there. 124 was up for third reading yesterday in the House. So that's the bill Senator McCormick, the PUC housekeeping bill Senator McCormick reported. I haven't looked into it to see what, if any, changes were made. So I have to check in on that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
yes,
I'd also
please
point out that I was never invited to address a House committee on the bill.
Okay.
often when the reporter of the bill goes to the other body and explains what it is. Were you as
Yeah.
chair? Did you?
No, but Chair Brigman called me and asked me about an item or two, and then said, "Okay, it doesn't look very controversial," and he seemed to be, sort of relaxed about the whole thing.
Yeah, it really is a housekeeping bill.
Okay. I just wanted to check in because we had a meeting last week on the universal recycling law and food waste. I set up a meeting yesterday with Chair Sheldon and Mike O'Grady just to look more closely at some of the legal language. I wanted to check in with the committee, and when we had the opportunity to spend 45 minutes with Mr. O'Grady, his case for why reading the hierarchy not quite so strictly as a pure hierarchy became more apparent. And that is, it's not that the hierarchy isn't clearly expressed, but it's a policy. So it's a little less directive than pure statute. And there's other solid waste law that it sits in context with. And it was reading it in context that makes the situation more complicated. I'd say in the end, my sense of where this committee is and where we want to get to is, okay, the law is what it is at the moment, but how do we stop having so much plastic end up in food residuals and then in soils? So part of what I was hoping to do today is just hear from people about priorities for any kind of work you want to do over the summer and for next January. So I would think, given this committee's history on plastics, that that would be one we would want to pursue. Any thoughts? Senator Campion.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I'd like to just go through, if we might, our other bills just before we go too much. I'm wondering where everything else is.
So 124, the housekeeping bill is coming back,
Yeah.
I believe.
That's 124. Yep.
109 went with approps.
Yep.
126 e-waste is in committee still. 129 Fish and Wildlife Board is in this committee still. And 108 is in House Natural. And they are contemplating, well, anyway, so it's there.
This year, though, we're looking to get 109 back, of course, or figured out, and 124 for sure.
Right.
And then are there any House bills, Mr. Chair, that we worked on? There was at least one.
Yes, well, 108.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, H108, yes, okay. Thank you.
We also ended up dipping into, remember, S101, which was compost, farm compost, and I might have these numbers backwards, 102, which was the housing bill.
Yeah,
I think
we're looking to get 124 back and 109, and then H108. Those are the three that are definitely in play.
Yes.
Okay, thank
you.
That's
it. There was an early bill. I'm forgetting the number. I think it's S. Sorry, I have a list here. No, that's it. And so, sorry. So there are loose ends in terms of things that we could follow up on now, or before going home. We could do still something on a couple things that are live issues. One of them is standard offer. Senator McDonald might want to speak a little bit about that. The opportunity there is actually in finance, where there's a bill with miscellaneous energy topics in it related to tax. So why don't we set aside a minute or two now, and we can do more if we want to. Senator McDonald, do you want to tee up standard offer and talk a little bit about it?
Well, Senate Finance passed it to us to, advise them. And we haven't,
Right.
where Senate Finance is waiting to hear what we have to say.
Okay.
I sent some, a short bit of language, sample language for that Jude had, and I asked her to send it to all of you. But it extends the standard offer program, and I think it said for 3 years, but 2 years would probably be satisfactory. And it also referenced some language that we had passed in the past session, which directed the PUC to make sure that they weren't authorizing standard offer construction in places that were constrained areas or places that were not well disposed to being put on the grid. That was one of the concerns I think Melissa Bailey talked about, and Mr. McNamara about that, that there were areas that were constrained, and I believe that we've already given the PUC that authority, and they've already denied applications in the SHIA. I went ahead and we had we had some statistics presented to us last week, which said the standard offered program are providing electricity at lower rates per kilowatt hour than what Green Mountain Power is buying for. I don't know if those statistics were cherry picked, but there were a couple witnesses that were on that said, yeah, that's the cost of electricity to the grid from the standard offer, and it's better than what the utilities are buying, which kind of makes me scratch my head. Why would the utilities be paying more for electricity than they can get from standard offer? So I didn't know what our recommendation was going to be to the Finance Committee.
Senator Campion.
Do we know the timing of when they were looking for that recommendation?
Oh, yesterday, but
Oh,
it's still available. It's still okay tomorrow.
okay.
Right. My sense was that it's on any of these programs, especially something with a complicated history, that I would like to be able to take more testimony, but I don't think we have that luxury. And so one possible workaround is the last year that they will put out, ask for bids for power is next year, which means that I think they'll already be looking to shut down the program when we would be coming back next year. So rather than drive that close to the edge, I don't know if Senator McDonald, if you'd be open to just adding a year, which gives us the second half of the biennium to go ahead and really look at it.
Suggested that, and these programs take about a year to be presented to the board. So they've got to get their ducks lined up and get their financing numbers lined up. So if you only do it a year, if people haven't started already, that's a pretty quick turnaround. The language that I sent you all also asks that the PUC look at designing a program for that would take over when when standard offer expired, were we to extend the date, that would suggest how we might do batteries on site as part of making the sunshine at night and making the solar electricity available in the evening when it would be more valuable. So.
And so the wrinkle that came up yesterday in finance was actually over taxation of battery storage facilities, or energy storage facilities, I guess they're called. What dawned on me finally was the realization that we've been talking for a couple of years about, adding storage next to generation to improve the value of that new asset, which makes sense. But the other thing is, for a utility, if they just put battery storage anywhere on their grid that's well placed, like next to a substation or something, if they have
They put the,
renewable generation on that circuit, it can be stored. It doesn't need to be at the site, it could be at the distribution station. So I'm feeling like there's more to learn there too.
well, that, in that case, they can, many utilities cannot find a buyer for electricity between midnight and 5 o'clock in the morning. They offer it at discounted prices, which is routine, and there are not buyers. So if a utility simply takes their base power, 24/7 power, and between midnight and 5 o'clock in the morning, puts it in a battery, and then releases it the next evening during peak, they save money if the battery costs less than the than the amount of money
Right.
they're not, the amount of power they're not throwing away between midnight and 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right. I am trying to see if we can look at that language, because I don't know if everyone's checked their email.
Jude has it if it's possible for her to put it up.
I will look for it again.
Oh, thank you so much, Jude.
Yep. Sorry, the email is really slow right now.
There was another item on that I failed to mention, and that was that the size of net metering projects was like 2.2 kilowatts or whatever. And the reason it was is because that's what Northern Power Systems windmills were when this thing was first configured. And it was kind of an arbitrary number that was made to fit something that was manufactured in Vermont. That's in the second paragraph. But
So I found it and popped it up, Jude.
Oh, you already, yeah.
oh, thank you.
Can people see that? Is it big enough or whatever?
So the only
I'm good.
changes in statute are what are, it's underlined, and
Trying to. How's that?
That's perfect.
So capacity goes up to 5. Oh, wow, this is so this is a non-modest proposal in terms of the increase. We had 90 megawatts.
well, that's the size of the projects, not the size of the total available, or is it? Yeah.
127 is the current program finish line, and it gets pushed to 217.5.
No. Might want to keep the original number the same.
Right. And the current annual bid request for bids is 7.5 megawatts, and it goes to 30 megawatts. So it's a fourfold increase. This is an ambitious.
I keep the megawatts the same, and I'd let them build bigger ones. So this was put up there for getting a discussion going, and
Okay.
you could keep it the same amount of electricity. You could allow them to build larger ones, which would be delivering at a lower price. And yep.
Okay.
You could do
So committee
2 years rather than 3.
Right.
Otherwise, it expires the 1st of January.
Right. And I'm just trying to read the language to figure out how many more years we're adding here. All right. So just a quick temperature check with the committee. Are people interested in a fixed term period of increase? The maximum size would go up, but the total number of megawatts in a year would remain the same. Is that what you're saying, Senator McDonald?
I'm looking for what is palatable and makes sense to the committee and doesn't rock the boat. I'm looking for an extension of the sunset,
Yeah, I for
keep
one
the
think
program going,
This makes
don't
sense.
expand it, don't shrink it.
Okay, so
I would say at the least, extend the program and don't shrink it.
Yeah, no, I think this makes sense. I appreciate Senator McDonald doing this.
okay. So I don't, my sense is that there has not been enough testimony on the long-term future of standard offer anyway. So I think buying time for the program is seems reasonable to me. And but accelerating the program, that I'd be uncomfortable doing. You know, like buying time so we could see where we're going to go in the long haul seems great, but this is otherwise it would be a substantive change. So as a committee, we have a sense, we don't need to have a formal vote or anything, but just that we would support Senator McDonald's proposal that he'll be bringing to finance.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And that's for keeping the amount the same, allowing bigger projects, but keeping the total amount of electricity the same. So I know what to bring to finance.
Yeah, I think it's the same amount of additional power each year, which is
Unchanged. Okay.
it's currently, the current amount is 10 megawatts a year. So remember, it was sort of it stepped up over time.
Yep.
So if we just stayed flat, then I think, because we know there's some heartburn on the side of DUs, although the data we saw the other day made I think many people wonder what that concern was about. Some of the DUs also expressed an interest in doing everything through the RES, but we didn't get far enough into it, I don't think, to reconcile those two.
I think that the bottom of this is the language that had been passed previously that gave the PUC the authority to not approve projects in the SHIA and where they're impractical for the operation of the grid. So, if you keep going down to the bottom.
Yep. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Okay, so this is a helpful map for developers. It doesn't seem to direct the PUC not to approve a project in those areas.
Yeah.
All right. So
Or we can
this will have to go.
chuck that one and go with the above. And since the PUC is already making decisions about not locating where there's excess power.
Okay. Is everyone comfortable with seeing this moved forward in finance? I mean, I think there's also the opportunity in finance for more testimony, and then there'll be a committee of conference. So I'm sure that interested parties will speak up if we propose extending, if finance proposes extending standard offer.
Well, they won't, and finance is not likely to do that without our recommendation. So. which is, I think, why they asked us to take a look at it.
Senator Westman, you have any thoughts?
When are you taking this to finance, Mark?
Whenever the committee tells me to, but I would certainly let the chair of finance know that if it was coming. She's kind of on a buck and bronco right now, and
Yeah, I get
with a lot of stuff. Yep.
right. So will the committee be taking this up today?
I would share this with them, and the chair would probably try and get testimony tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday or whatever. So
Would it be helpful for everyone in the room and listening to the call if we asked to have it taken up Monday or Tuesday whenever finance meets, whatever their first meeting is next week, if the chair were willing to wait till then?
So my answer is going to be yes, but repeat the question first. You just asked me.
Well, because for some people, there'll be, I know that some folks will say, well, they'll be surprised, whatever.
Yeah,
But
well, yeah,
this is the nature of the end.
Advise the chair of finance not to take this today or tomorrow and pass it before listening to taking some testimony.
Right.
This
And,
isn't like what we did, how we got civil union, excuse me, civil CUDs passed, which was, we took it to finance, took it to government ops, and government ops came back, and we trusted them in finance, and we passed it, and that's how we got CUDs. So
Yes, I remember that maneuver. I was on GovOps then. So okay, so let's do that. And Senator Westman, anyone who's interested, if I'm going to sort of put the word out, just in case someone's not aware of this proposal that's going to be offered in finance. And that way there'll be a chance through the next 5 days, really, for people to 4 or 5 days to reach out and provide information.
Well, may I ask? Oh, sorry, go Senator Westman.
So from what I'm hearing, really you're looking for just an extension.
Yes.
Because there
Does that
is
seem right?
some
what-
confusion for me around larger projects and not. And I can't move this on the screen. But the last, but okay.
So it's been ramping up in terms of how many the total contracts let per year. We're currently at, as my understanding, the peak, which is 10. This as originally drafted was going to boost that, so we'd say stay at 10. The only other, we're pushing out the end date. There's this one other change right here, where the maximum project size goes from 2.2 up to 5.
So is that the only change from present law that we're really talking about in this? Because I'm trying to follow what you've said, Chairman, and what Senator McDonald has said, and that's what I thought I heard.
yes, what I said, Senator Westman, was that we would allow the same amount of electricity to be generated that we used to, but we would allow projects to be larger than 2.2. And when they met the threshold, that it would be the same threshold for total new standard offer electricity.
Senator McCormick, you've politely had your hand up there. Sorry.
Yes, thank you. Mark, I just want to revisit the idea of only asking to continue to extend the program and not to expand it. Was that simply a strategic decision that you don't think we have the votes to
No,
expand?
We will, if we are successful, it will be at the pleasure of the Senate Finance Committee, which may be skittish about making increases and decreases, but might be more comfortable merely extending the program for 2 years while they take a look at putting together a standard offer that perhaps includes batteries, and put together a next step as opposed to continuation.
Okay, I'll tell you, usually when I take the less ambitious approach, basically to be nice, I end up regretting it, but I'll back you on this. I think if it's your view, because you're there and I'm not. So if your reading of the terrain is that this is as good as we're going to get, then
Well, I think this would be more welcome than any other proposal.
yeah.
Senator Bray's on finance also. He may have a different opinion, and
I
that's
think
my recommendation.
I think your sort of modest, the more modest version would buy comfort for people. More of what we're doing with the change that larger projects would be allowed, which is, I think, probably to the good for anyone who's concerned about cost, because larger projects tend to deliver lower cost per unit power.
Yep.
So Senator McDonald, are you going to take this? Was Ellen your drafter on this, Mr.
No,
Kowski?
it was drafted out of off campus, so I'll get
Okay.
this to Ellen and ask her to and deal with the changes that we've talked about.
Okay, great.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
I think Senator Campion, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Mr. Chair, so I'd stepped out for a second. So this will go to finance where additional testimony will be taken. Just to clarify, we are looking at our schedule in afternoon committee and just want to make sure that you're not talking about this committee taking additional testimony next week. Great. Okay, thank you.
I mean, someone could ask us to, but I'm not anticipating
Right.
that.
Okay.
Especially it's just for the most part an extension, not an expansion.
How many more projects would this extension get us? Any idea? The extension itself.
It would get us fewer if they're larger.
Uh-huh.
Right.
It's the same amount of electricity, which is likely to be in fewer projects, with each project producing, generating more, but not any additional electricity.
Right. Okay, well, great. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, Senator McDonald, for working on it and keeping it going. So let me, just so that I can be accurate when I'm in finance with Senator McDonald, my sense is that we have 5 people in this committee who are supporting an extension of, in essence, the current program with an adjustment on maximum plant capacity from 2.2 to 5 megawatts.
I would rather you say that you've got a majority of the committee, or 4 or 5. I'm
Okay.
not sure where I am yet.
Sure.
Yeah, that sounds fun. That sounds good.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks. All right. So that was one of the other items. We talked a little bit about food waste. I don't know. This one is, I'm not sure what we try to do as a committee between now and the adjourning, which is maybe 10 days off or something, on the food residuals issue that came up, other than to cast our eyes down the road towards the goal of, we worked on extended producer responsibility around packaging 2 sessions ago. got derailed by COVID in between. And so the thrust there is to go upstream and have less problematic waste to deal with by virtue of reducing the amount of waste. So there's that long-term response to it. And my sense is that the questions raised by people in the compost world, particularly trying to keep more plastic out of soils, that feels like an important thing for us to do, stem the tide before we end up with a lot of plastic going into compost, going into soils. So both those to me feel like something for a full session, full bill. Any thoughts about that one? I think I'm putting together, a priority list for next session.
Of course, absolutely.
Okay. I have one loose end here. Senator Campion, have you turned in your confirmation notice to the Senate Secretary on Commissioner Walk yet?
I believe so.
Okay,
I'll confirm. Thanks.
thanks. Forestry was another thing we spent some time on in the last 2 weeks. Do people have some thoughts about where we'd like to go? I mean, we're in the middle of a sea change, losing 11 to 15,000 acres a year, right? So no one is content with that situation. What I'm thinking about is there an interest on anyone's part on doing work between now and January to be take on forestry? Because I heard a pretty unanimous, that's not an acceptable status quo. We need to do better.
I would say yes, but I would say really we should ask the commissioner to come back with, a more, we don't have the resources. We don't have the resources to do everything. And I'd hate to do it without him and his ideas. So, we're not going to have a full study committee. That's for sure. And so some brainstorming with the commissioner, absolutely.
Okay, so we do have his 14-page report from his last visit, which has a lot of action items.
Include Mr. Fidel in that conversation, since, as I recall, he believes the report is very important, but I think he also had some additional approaches that were not in there.
Right. Okay. So I'll follow up with folks and see about having a conversation to keep that going post adjournment. Electronic waste, Senator Westman, you had a bill E126, S126. My sense was I just want to check in and to hear where you are on that.
I think that that the people in the industry have some work to do with the department and the agency before we can be serious about taking that up and moving it ahead.
Okay, I think that sounds like where we landed. Thank you. S129, Senator Campion, your bill, Fish and Wildlife Board governance. We know there's other fish and wildlife issues that are generally circulating.
Yeah, no, of course. I'm ready at any time. I think I was more on the side of maybe taking it up about a month ago. So if we wanted to, we're going to wait until next year. Absolutely.
Okay. We have a community scale renewable energy bill, but I'd say once again, it doesn't really have much in the way of takers. And if there's a conversation, standard offer, the proposal that Senator McDonald's bringing forward addresses some of the community scale renewable energy gap potentially in terms of opportunities to develop more in-state renewables. And the modification of the RES to do more. Frankly, that seems like it's one of the best tools in our toolkit, but we don't have testimony on that one yet. So I'm going to mark down to come back to the renewable energy standard next year. One thing that we talked about a year ago and 2 years ago, it got caught up in 277 or 267, whatever it was, in finance, moving the renewable energy standard to 100% renewable by 2030. There's a conversation we're having. If we're going to be electrifying things, let's make it cleaner electricity across the grid. So that was something I was interested in pursuing. I don't know if the committee shares that interest.
Mr. Chairman, I share that interest. And I think it's, I don't think we're really delivering an awful lot on the matter of global warming this year. And I'm dismayed by that.
Right.
We can at least do this.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, to be frank, the weatherization bill, I think it's an excellent contribution in terms of efficiency, reducing waste, but it has a relatively modest impact in terms of reducing overall emissions. The place we really need to go, we all know, is transportation, which is part of why I'm excited about the notion of our counseling becoming more comprehensive counseling that looks at financial health, including your energy budget, which will have transportation as part of it. And the bill 109 supports an increased build out of Mileage Smart. So we're getting into the arena. You know, I'll just say it's been hard to push the door open to get into thermal work. And we've done that more and more each year over the last 4 years. This year in 109, we actually just say, this is our territory now. We're not just knocking on the door or putting a toe through. I feel like we're knocking on the door, putting a toe through on transportation. And I'd love to see us come back in a bigger way on transportation next year.
I think we're doing better than we have done in the past. As I've said before, it took 20 years to legalize clotheslines in Vermont. So we're somewhat better there. We're not doing any harm. I think we're doing some good, but I keep going back to Senator McDonald's analogy with World War II, and just the all hands on deck approach that the whole nation took, and if they had handled the effort in World War II the way we're handling global warming now, I mean, they would not have rationed rubber. They would not have rationed gasoline. They would, ration sugar. What about my God-given candy rights? And I think that, next year is another year.
Right. Are you saying we'd be speaking German right now?
I think we'd be speaking German.
Right.
All right. So, yeah, we have. There's a lot of cultural change involved in changing energy use, and one of the most. Anyway, I am just agreeing. So, with that, the last thing I have on my list is, are we doing enough for Bennington County? I'm a little anxious there. I'm not sure if we have yet or not. Senator
not this year.
Senator Sears was talking about the new roundabout. I looked at a VTrans map of it. It's a very strange roundabout. There's only one road into it and one road out, so I don't know what that's about.
I know the plan is on the front page of the banner today, so I will.
Fold, come on.
Fold.
All right. So does anyone else have anything else that you wanted to touch base on before we wrap for today? I don't know if we're gonna. I'm guessing, just so we don't have any cheerful goodbyes now, that we might end up convening briefly between now and adjournment to take care of something. For instance, if we need to look at 124, but other than that, there's no meetings. There are no additional meetings scheduled. And I don't know what the floor schedule will be for next week, but I'm guessing we'll be able to grab an hour here or there early in the day as needed. All right. So with that,